Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the Supreme Court's 5-4 decision dissolving a temporary restraining order that a district court entered, telling the department do not cancel and in fact disperse these 1,000 or so grants to universities and public schools. Got to start with a little inside baseball point, which is you maybe have gotten wind of this in different of these dimensions, including Boasberg and different of these disputes. And that is a temporary restraining order is something different from a preliminary injunction. And it is supposed to just give 14 days for a court to just figure out which end is up, as it were, and then maybe move on to a preliminary injunction. However, moreover, a temporary restraining order is essentially not appealable except in very rare instances and by special writs like a mandamus in the courts of appeals. They don't dissolve those TROs, they let them run their 14 days. But the Supreme Court did it anyway. So we have a per curiam opinion that is, though they're not named, Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Barrett, and Kavanaugh. And what they say is, yeah, the district court called it a TRO, but it's really, basically a preliminary injunction. And that is a preliminary injunction is appealable. Why is that? Well, it's got a lot of the hallmarks, and then really, it's an unpersuasive. There's no reason not to call it a TRO, but they basically bulldoze down that and say it's a preliminary injunction. So, all right, and then having gotten to the point where we can upset it if we want, the five in a pretty short per curiam say it's going to be irreparable harm. We're going to dissolve this order that tells the Department of Education to return these grants to people who are waiting for it. Why is that? Because if the United States winds up winning down the line, it's going to be really hard to get that money back. Probably true, but of course that goes to the really important consideration. Is the United States the very first thing you think about, which is the likelihood of success. So you got two dissenting opinions here. One by Kagan and for herself. She just says, this is a mistake. Nowhere in the papers does the government defend the legality of canceling the education grants at issue here. There are, they're going to lose, and they should lose, at least so she asserts. And moreover, the states have represented and, really backed up the notion that the loss of these grants is going to force them, to real injury right now. For example, by having to curtail or even cancel teacher training programs and the like. Then after that, we have a continuation that I won't belabor of this TRO versus preliminary injunction point, etc. But Kagan closes with an important point, which is we're doing too much of these emergency motion things. And, this is a point that people have been making again and again and again, including Steve Vladeck, who's written a book about it. But it's the administration's favored way to go and to just scream and cry emergency. And, when that happens, you don't get full briefing. You don't get really oral argument. And you have this pressure of the government coming in and screaming the sky is falling. And that just affects everything. So she says we should just not do this with bare bones briefing, no argument, and scarce time for reflection. Sometimes the court needs to do that. But man, they've been tripling the incidence of it, and it's just too much. So in my view, and this is her other big point, besides there's no possible legal justification for just canceling these grants, but nothing about this case demanded our immediate intervention. In other words, leave the TRO, the temporary restraining order, in for the 14 days. Don't jump to construe it as a preliminary injunction, as the court has done. And, we can take it in the normal course after the district court rules. So that's Kagan, and hers is quite short. Then we have Justice Jackson, who does an opinion that Sotomayor joins, and it's a whole thing. It's like 16, 17 pages. And it really, it goes through all of this on the merits, including the sort of, hard-heartedness and callousness of canceling all these grants, and of, basically sticking it to the states in the way that the administration seems to love to do. And she, engages, of course, on this point, although the courts of appeals generally lack appellate jurisdiction, they jump to do it. The TRO, as Jackson, expires in 3 days. 3 days. And it'll be moved even earlier if the district court rules on the preliminary injunction motion that it already has. A preliminary injunction, again, appealable, a TRO not. But the main point here is they canceled all of these grants that had been, we're talking again, this is part of, a theme of what they do. We are previously awarded grants to public schools and universities, already awarded. So it's not the executive's business. It's just a general theme to it's basically Congress could do it, but where the hell does the executive in the Trump administration come in and say, oh, never mind, we're going to take all these away? And Jackson really lays out the facts at much greater length and explains why, there's no meaningful explanation here at all. So a lot of stuff on the procedure part and also the substance part. And then interestingly that, first, Roberts joins neither dissent. But you have a real sort of flexing of muscles by the three, of course. So there's only so much they can flex. But to say that this emergency motion stuff that the administration keeps throwing our way, like they throw in like a ticking grenade and we got to get rid of it before it explodes. That's like bad stuff. And we should be much more proactive and thoughtful about saying no. Here, for example, wait your 3 days, then get a ruling and bring it up in the normal course. Okay, so that's a whole ongoing kind of fight that will continue to play out, and probably, without any major changes, without a majority of the court to do it and to chastise the administration. And then on the merits, again, it's just dissolving the TRO. So the merits could still hold, and there's nothing in the majority to support what the government did, and which seems to be flagrantly weeding in Congress's garden. And there's at least 3 votes saying this was wrong. So it could still go down, and the order still could be given, return these grants that had already been awarded. But just for now, it's no longer the case that the linebackers are frozen and the administration has to return these grants. They can still kind of hold them, freeze them, pending a hearing on the preliminary injunction, which may result in a holding, an appealable one, but a holding saying, give up these grants. You can't just take them as you did. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.